Welcome to the Boxing Source Podcast, where we go over the latest news in boxing and react to all of the fights that happened in the past week. Now, let's go to our host, J.R. Bell. Yo. What's happening, everybody? What is going on, everybody? What's good, everybody? We are here. We are, live and everything here when it comes to the Boxing Source podcast. Hopefully, everyone is doing well here. Has to say, a little bit of a delay of sorts here, but man, I'm still catching up from, being out there in Brooklyn, New York, man. And I'm gonna tell y'all, that was the longest fight card that I've ever been to there when it comes to that farewell to Brooklyn fight card that was at the Barclays Center there yesterday. Or basically, that ended, what, about like 16 hours ago or something like that, man. I'm telling you, that was just absolutely insane, y'all. It was absolutely insane. I mean, we had, man, they had so many fights on this thing here, man. And you had what I told of 14 fights. And the crazy part about it is there would have been 15 fights on that card, man. But hey, it was something because it's like a whole bunch of those fights ended in decisions. So whether it was like a 4 rounder, a 6 rounder, an 8 rounder, or a 10 rounder, you basically had just about every one of them joints, be going the distance except for like a couple of them. And that was pretty much it. You know what I'm saying? Big shout to everyone that's going to be listening live or will be listening to the replay here, whether you're going to be watching the replay or listening to the replay via audio. Shout out to my guy, the Prince, in the building. And he asked, if I was able to catch any football this week. No, I wasn't able to catch the Saturday, games here. And then, when I got back, I just was ending seeing here the Cowboys game. They're going up against the Commanders. So you had that. But then also, if you're able to catch the end of the Giants versus the Broncos, hey, that was a crazy game right there, the Giants versus the Broncos, man. But that's pretty much what I had. I think, for a college game, hey, you got number 2 Indiana now. Indiana is number 2 team in the country. And also, the other thing that I missed yesterday was Florida State losing to Stanford pretty much on like a last second play or something like that, man. And I also missed the whole thing with Miami losing to Louisville. That's crazy. Shout out to my guy Thomas Hill in the building. You know what I'm saying? What's good with you? Like I said, I mean, I was out there for that whole fight card at the Barclays Center, man. It was absolutely crazy. You had like a whole bunch of fighters that were being on that card, from Damian Neba to Rishad Monty to Chris Colbert, to Elijah Gonzalez and Dominic Dimes Crowder, and it was crazy, man, because I was going through that whole card, and as was mentioned before, a whole bunch of them went the full, rounds, whether it was like 8 rounds or 4 rounds or 6 rounds. And even like the heavyweights there with Neba versus Dewechko, that almost went the full, joint there before they ended up stopping that fight. And then you had the co-feature bout with Dominic Crowder, and man, that went the full 10 rounds too. You know what I'm saying? I think my guy BEO Sports is in the building as well. He was out there, for the fights and stuff like that. So he could tell you too, like how long it was to be out there. I don't know if he was out there as long as I was, but still, that's crazy to have like 14 fights and a whole bunch of them to kind of like go the distance. Yeah, man. I mean, I was able to enjoy the time out there. You did have a number of fighters that were able to be in the building. And you had like what was it? The commentators there, like you had Teofimo Lopez that was out there. You had Richard Hitchens that was out there. You had Andre Berto that was out there. You had Shannon the Cannon Briggs that was out there. You had Stephen Fulton that was out there. You had Franchon Cruz Azern that was out there. You had my guy Jalil Major Hackett that was out there. A number of other fighters there, to be in the building. You know what I mean? and said, he asked how did Keith Cologne look? Yeah, hey, he was like one of those fan favorites out there. He was able to perform very well in his fight that he had. So I think he was able to get a stoppage in that one. So that was like one of the rare stoppages that they had on the fight card. You know what I'm saying? So he stays undefeated. There, kind of like building his way up. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, it was a lot to go through. In the fight card, right? And my thing is that I kind of like try to pull a one nighter or something like that. Try to get out there, be there for that whole day, and then just come back, early in the morning and stuff like that, right? So, I tried to do that, right? And then I had something that was initially scheduled for like 2 a.m. or something to roll out. And I'm telling you, the fight card didn't end until a little bit after 1 a.m. So that kind of like told you that was like a time crunch or whatever it is. So I didn't leave until like 4 a.m. or something like that to get back, back home side show about like 8 a.m. or something. You know what I mean? But going into the fight main event there, Danny Garcia, of course, former champion 140 pounds, former champion 147 pounds, had an attempt to win a world title at 160 pounds against Erislandy Lara, but fell short with that. We hadn't seen him, pretty much back since then. You know what I mean? So he did his thing here for this special event, farewell to Brooklyn, and all that type of stuff here, where he kind of wanted to have one of the multiple fights that he had in the Barclays Center, going up against Daniel Gonzalez, right? So last year had the fight against Erislandy Lara, pretty much got like outpointed and everything like that, and just said, you know what, man, I ain't got much of a shot in this, man. So ended up bowing out in that. And then this is like the first fight that he's had in over a year. So getting in the mix there against Daniel Gonzalez. Gonzalez was there, with a record of 22 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. And it was interesting going into the bout because there were some that were out there that were saying that, hey, maybe Daniel Gonzalez could get him. You know what I'm saying? And they were saying like, hey, gotta watch out for this one. Gotta watch out for this one. And I kind of like had a little bit of feelings towards this matchup as well. Thought it would be a little bit intriguing going into it. But then the fight was happening. And, as me, I was like floating around. But by the time the co-feature bout was out there with Dominique Crowder, I was pretty much like by the front row or whatever it is. I was there, with, my guys, Lil Major Hackett and Bernard Hackett, and my brother BBO Sports TV was out there too, right? And we was able to check out the fight there, front row. So they had like they had Fab, they had Meek Mill, out there, man, and man, who else they had out there, man? It was like a few folks out there, whether it's from Philly or New York that was there to represent and stuff like that. I forgot to mention, you also had like fight out there, Edgar Berlanga, but that was pretty much like Keith Connolly. Like Keith Connolly's fighters, all of his fighters were out there in attendance basically for the fight card. So you had Berlanga, you had Teofimo, you had Richard Hitchens. You know what I'm saying? So that was something right there, right? But back to the fights, main event. When I saw, Daniel Gonzalez and Danny Garcia, up close, I was like, oh man, this is like a super welterweight versus a weighted welterweight, or basically like a super lightweight. Because those first couple of punches from Danny Garcia, they really affected Daniel Gonzalez, man. And Daniel Gonzalez didn't really have much that could, really affect Danny Garcia there early, right? And it was something there because I kind of like seeing that. I was like, yo, bro is like too small, man. And then he went through the first round. You kind of like seeing Danny Garcia, do his thing as far as like waiting to see, what Daniel Gonzalez is going to do, try to catch him with the counters and that type of stuff. And then the second round, he kind of seen that, Danny Garcia could do pretty much like anything he wanted, so to speak there. But, kind of like was something there with the action or whatever it is. But it was kind of funny because like live, you had it to the point where I was chopping it up with Jaleel Hackett, and even with like the pace of the fight and how things was going, maybe given how many fights there was and like how long those fights were, he pretty much like said like, yo, this is going to full 10 rounds. Now this happened when it was the third round, and he like turned to me or something and said, yeah, man, this one here is going to full 10 rounds. And then a couple seconds after he said that, bah! And then you see Daniel Gonzalez on the canvas. I was like, oh, and I was like, oh man. And then Gonzalez tried to get up, and then man, he failed to do that. You know what I mean? And didn't rise back up to the canvas. And that was it, man. That was a knockout victory there for Danny Garcia, right? So, with that being said, you got Danny Garcia out there that had the knockout win there, and was able to score the victory and look like, man, for real though, it looked like easy work. To be honest with you, it looked like easy work. So the thing about it is, like we gotta see like how Danny Garcia like reacts to this and everything like that, because a lot of people were thinking that this particular fight, depending on what would happen, would kind of like be his last encounter there as far as like being in the ring and all of that. But after this and what went down, then maybe he has some thoughts about it. So, but real quick though, what I'm saying, I gotta check out this thing here. I'm gonna try to queue up the thing for the video and that type of stuff here. So y'all can bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to queue up the video here, and this is kind of like part of the stuff as far as like after the fight there with Danny Garcia. So I'm gonna see here. We got this thing going on. So let me see if I could queue this up and run this for y'all here. So here we go in like 5, 4, 3.
So how'd the knockout feel?
Oh, it felt good. It felt good. I started 2012 with a knockout, and I ended it 13 years later with the same knockout. Big level.
That was beautiful.
So
It
that's
felt good
official?
to knock somebody out.
That's official? This is your last fight?
Nah,
Yeah, like I said, man.
You can't be.
Can't be.
I'm standing on it.
No way, Danny. We want you and Keith Thurman, man. Anybody.
So you tell me if Xander Zayas calls you tomorrow and is interested in a home fight in Puerto Rico against you for the WBO world title, you wouldn't be interested in that fight? If Virgil Ortiz will call you tomorrow, I was
The price
interested.
got to be right, like Bob Barker. Because,
So you're not fully retired.
well, I say 85% retired.
85%. Okay, I like that.
15% because I love boxing, and if it makes sense, but this dollar sign got to be right.
So
Nah,
give us
it's not even worth, the risk not worth the reward for me no more. 'Cause I'm not even getting paid.
How did you see when the other Danny Gonzalez, when he threw that looping shot?
Yeah.
Did you predict that when you called him with that hook to put him down?
I just knew he was moving, so I'm just gonna stalk him, and I'm gonna keep my distance. So when he throws, I can just time him real quick. As soon as he stopped his feet, I just timed him with a big shot. Because I know in the first round he hit him with the right hand, and then he got like a little dizzy. So then he started running. Then I just took my time. That's it. Just took my time.
Danny, congrats on the win. You really called your shot. You didn't knock Dookie out of him,
Yeah.
but it was a beautiful performance. If this is your last fight, what would you like to say to your fans right now?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all my fans who really believed in me. Like, I earned my fans the hard way. Like, I really had to fight for my fans. Like, I was never really promoted like the star, the top dog, the greatest. I never got prospect of the year. I never got fighter of the year. Even when I was beating everybody up, it was just always something. I really earned I really earned it the hard way, like my fans. So I appreciate them for sticking by me. I mean, I gained a lot of fans over the years. I mean, Samir Khan, like fans in London, Mexican fans when I fought Eric Morales, like Argentine fans. I just gained so many fans all around the world over the years just by fighting good fighters. And I appreciate all my fans for just sticking by me. Because without the fans, it's nothing. There's no sport, no boxing.
Hey, Danny, since you're a promoter outside of just a boxer now, are there any other upcoming events that you can talk to us about?
Well, right now, I'll probably just go back to do some small shows just to like move my fighters in Philly. And then hopefully next year I could probably do a big show.
Can't wait.
What's your lasting moment here at the Barclays Center over the years?
What was the question?
What's the lasting moment that stands out to you at the Barclays Center?
Every moment. I mean, Eric Morales, Zab Judah, Keith Thurman, Lamont Peterson, even this night. This is historical for me because, you know, I'm not even a big time promoter. And I took the chance. You know, I didn't have nobody really got behind me. I just made a couple phone calls and did this whole entire show. It was me and my partner that did it from the muscle. So I didn't even do this for the money. I just did it because I love boxing. So I just want to keep promoting and taking chances. And I think my chances always paid off in my career. So I'm just going to keep taking chances. I feel good. When I was in there, I'm like, damn, I'm really fighting right now. Like, I had to like warm up. I'm like, oh, it was like a little cream. But I snapped out of it and I got back to it.
Danny, you got y'all. Hit the like button to support.
Box TV official, thank you for everything you've done for boxing, brother. And thank you for choosing Brooklyn to be a farewell. Just a two-part question. A lot of people are wondering why you chose Brooklyn and not a farewell to Philly.
Well, you know, I built a big fan base in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn they play a big role in my career. And for some reason, you know, when I was a champion, I never fought in Philly. I don't know why, but New York has always shown me love. So it's just a good place for people to come from Philly. They just drive up and enjoy the night. So it's just the way it worked, you know. It's the way God wanted it.
And then the second part. Thank you so much, guys. And then
Danny, one more question. Would you say Brooklyn is your second home?
Yeah, I'm thinking about moving to New York.
Oh, really? Let's go! We got it!
So there you go, y'all. That was, comments from Danny Garcia after the fight that he had there against Daniel Gonzalez. And one of the things that kind of like stood out there as far as like, one, when I was able to ask the question there as far as like his last moment, he pretty much like cherishes every moment there that he had at the Barclays Center and kind of like named a number of those fights that he did have there, starting off, with his bout that he had against Eric Morales there, after defeating Amir Khan. Then the following fight there against Zab Judah. You had the fight against Lamont Peterson, that he was able to get there. That was a big win for him in his career. And then, following that up with his win over Paulo Malignaggi, so number of fights there, even the close fight that he had against Keith Thurman, that was there at the Barclays Center. The Sean Porter fight there, also, but him also talking about him not being able to have that opportunity to defend the world title there in Philadelphia. And that was something. I think once he acquired the belt there at 140 pounds, he was able to get himself in against Amir Khan, right? And that one, I don't know, man. Maybe they felt like that was going to be a lick or something like that. Amir Khan, even though he had lost his previous fight, they still put him in the mix in order to try to win a world title there, right? Against Danny Garcia. And then Danny Garcia, had that moment where he was able to get that knockout win, because with Amir Khan, he had the split decision loss to Lamont Peterson the previous year, and then was able to get into a position to fight for another world title there against Danny Garcia. But Danny Garcia had other plans there and was able to, get him out of the, but a number of, like I said, a countless amount of fights there for Danny Garcia there at the Barclays Center, and then having this moment here where he is able to knock out Daniel Gonzalez in order to get the win there. But, while that was happening, I was able to try to get this thing here for the fight card and everything like that. And it kind of like shows, like, I don't know if you can really see it on the camera or whatever it is, but like here's like a whole bunch of fights, and then you got another page here with all of these fights. But while I get this thing going and cracking, I want to get my brother here to be able to join here on the Boxing Talk. What hasn't been able to get on for a little bit. As last weekend, I didn't have a podcast here last weekend, so we might try to catch up on what happened last weekend, particularly with Boots Ennis. They're getting that first round knockout against Luis Lima. But I wanted to see about having my guy here, the Boxing Academic, joining in on this edition of the Boxing Source podcast. Man, what's going on, Boxing Academic?
Not much. How you doing tonight, JR?
Oh man, I'm recovering. Like I said, almost like pulled an all-nighter, getting out there to New York City for that fight card that involved Danny Garcia and everything like that. And him getting a knockout victory there at the Barclays Center and things like that. So, some people are kind of like talking about, maybe this might be his last, rodeo, as they say, or whatever it is. From the clip, he said he's pretty much like 85% done. So he's kind of like close to, being out the game or something like that. But if he does like close it out with this knockout win, then he would kind of finish his career, so to speak, with the record of 38 wins and just 4 losses there, if that happens. But what are your thoughts about like Danny Garcia overall, and just him having this win over at the Barclays Center?
Yeah, I mean, from the video that you had of him, he said that he essentially had to earn everything that he kind of got, and I would tend to agree with him. I mean, Danny is not a guy that like he has exceptional sort of skills that just jump off the paper at you. Like a Roy Jones or something. Like he got exceptional talent that just jumps off the sheet, and you can see that like with your eyes closed. Danny, I wouldn't say he has that, but I mean what he does have is a special left hand, and he has shown over a number of years, from him to take the title first to him defending it, and just in fights that most people probably didn't have him winning, or they didn't project him to win, like the Lucas Matisse, for an example. Like he quailed Lucas Matisse, and I mean, to be honest, out of the crop of fighters who would come up, I mean, Danny Garcia to me is one that should be considered for the Hall of Fame. I think so. Just for what he did in I guess his division. Yeah, I mean, comparing it to what they showing with other people, yeah, especially he should be considered. But yeah, I think he had a good career. Obviously, when he stepped up like to the elite competition, he failed, and obviously Danny is more of a flat-footed fighter. He needs you to sort of be there so he can land that hellacious punch that he does land. And when he has movers and things like that, that doesn't necessarily bode well for him. But great fighter. He definitely gave his all for us. And I mean, every fight I've seen him, I mean, we didn't get no travesty. We weren't angry at him. We weren't saying, oh, why am I watching this fight at 1:30 in the morning? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, every fight I've ever seen, they've always either been competitive, and I mean, he came out on top on most of them.
Right. Yeah. Or at least, he would have like a definitive result there in a majority of his fights. You know what I mean? And, like you were talking about there with his run at 140 pounds, he was able to have those, statement victories there against like the likes of Matisse, Zab Judah, Eric Morales, and Amir Khan, right? And then, the one that was kind of like a little bit north of 140 pounds was the fight that he had against Lamont Peterson, which, at the time, both of those guys were around the top of the division there at 140. I mean, with the exception there of Peterson, having the loss that he had against Matisse, before Matisse and Danny Garcia fought each other. But still, Peterson was able to get a couple victories and then match up with Danny Garcia there in 2015. So that kind of like said, like, okay, these two guys are still like out there as top guys at the 140-pound division. And as you said, in comparison to a number of fighters there that may have competed at 140 pounds, that was a pretty significant run there for Danny Garcia at that front. there when it came to the 147-pound division, like he fought like pretty much like anybody around that particular era, from Paulie Malignaggi to Robert the Ghost Guerrero to Keith Thurman to Sean Porter to Errol Spence Jr. Only one that he kind of didn't really fight was Terrence Crawford, so to speak. And people could talk about what happened, what didn't happen around that particular point, but at least here with this one, like he would kind of like be just, I would say, just below or Sean Porter as far as like who they fought, the who's who there in the welterweight division around that time period. So Sean Porter pretty much fought everybody. There are at least all the notable fighters, but right below that you have Danny Garcia, and there, as you said, like he had like close, either good clean victories or close losses. At least he had the close loss to Keith Thurman, close loss to Sean Porter. They're both of them at the Barclays Center, but he was still competitive in a number of those fights. So here he could kind of like make some type of a case to probably be eligible to be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame on that front.
And I think it's interesting because you could argue, I don't know, I have to think about this. I'm going to say a statement, and I'm not saying this definitively. Someone could argue that Sean Porter may have had the better career overall, like total career. Sean Porter may have had the better total career. I can't confirm that for sure. I have to think about it. However, with Danny Garcia's run at 140, that run is good enough to me on its own to like afford him a place just for what he did in that division. Now, mind you, north of that, he started losing fights when he fought better I can't even say better competition, when he fought different competition, because I mean Matisse is good, Zab Judah's good, and I mean I guess you can argue maybe when he fought the guys, at the same time he got those quality wins. Amir Khan was definitely good when he fought him. Exactly. So I would argue that his standing to get in the Hall of Fame might be greater than Sean Porter, even though Sean Porter may have had a better career. I don't know. I have to think about that.
Yeah, because the thing is, at the very least, for right now, Sean Porter is on the ballot for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I think he's been on the ballot for a couple of years. For Sean Porter, he's had his whole career at 147 pounds, and as I mentioned, he's fought the who's who there at welterweight, right? And has been like a two-time welterweight champion, defeating Danny Garcia for like the WBC belt, and had the IBF title. Just fell short against Keith Thurman for the WBA title, and then ended up getting stopped by Terrence Crawford when they fought for the WBO title. So with Sean Porter, even though I'm a fan of Sean Porter and things like that, but you have like him being like a two-time champion there at welterweight. For Danny Garcia, he has been a two-division world champion there at the super lightweight and the welterweight divisions. And his run at super lightweight, could say that, hey, he might have, some type of a case to, be amongst eligible there in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. But, as I, kind of like mentioned in, previous podcasts or, through the midweek report, it's very difficult to try to pick 3 to 5 people out of a list of 42 participants, so to speak, there that would be on the ballot. So when you have someone like a Danny Garcia, if he's able to be put on the ballot, would he be able to be considered to be in the Hall of Fame? I don't know about all of that, but I'll say this. You talked about the timing of some of the victories that he has, like against an Eric Morales or against a Zab Judah. What I would say, like Eric Morales, is there as a Hall of Famer. And as I said many times before, and I say it again, Zab Judah should be a Hall of Famer. So at least if that were to be the case in, I guess, the next 2 or 3 years, so to speak, let's say Zab Judah does, have a way to, get in the Hall of Fame, then, Danny Garcia would have 2 victories over Hall of Famers there. You know what I mean? And, that kind of could count for something in comparison to some of the other fighters that would be on the ballot, or as a lot of people mention, some of the fighters that are already inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Is Josh Taylor on the ballot?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, he's still fighting.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Well, he said he recently retired. He recently retired. That was this year. So it would be what, like 2028. He would be eligible. So it wouldn't be until 2028 that Josh Taylor would be eligible to be on the ballot. So you do have that run that we talk about with Josh Taylor and him becoming a undisputed champion there at 140 pounds. It's just that, after him winning that undisputed championship, Taylor had the bout that he had there against Jack Catterall that, a number of people felt like he didn't win. And then after that, ended up giving up all the belts except for one. And then by the time he had the one, he lost to Teofimo Lopez. And then after that, he just started to lose a good amount of the fights that he's had, up to that point. And then finally going up to welterweight, having the one fight at welterweight and losing at welterweight, then he kind of packed it up as far as his career is concerned. So, Josh Taylor would be another fighter that could be under consideration, and actually that could be a good conversation of sorts, right? If you have, say for example, if you do have Danny Garcia saying that that's it, it's a wrap, and he would be done this year. They Josh Taylor and Danny Garcia could be there on the ballot, and it would kind of be something where maybe they would have a conversation of who they would kind of pick between those two. But as I was mentioning, when you have up to 42 fighters on the ballot, it's crazy. It's wild to see if anyone could pick, 2 or 3 that would kind of stand out there when you compare all of those fighters. But just for a point of reference, on the Boxing Source website, I have 2 articles on there. One kind of goes over every fighter that is on the ballot, gives a brief bio of what they did in their career, and then I say, hey, who are the 3 fighters that I would pick off of that ballot there? So it kind of shows you how difficult it could be at times to get into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Although this year, some kind of have an obvious pick to be in the Hall of Fame when he shouldn't really be a first ballot. And I've mentioned that before too. Come on, y'all, what are we doing? But back to the thing there with Danny Garcia out there at the Barclays Center, getting that win, knockout, and things like that. They kind of try to put the fight card together. You'll have a number of fighters out there, depending on who would, be part of it. One of them, as I mentioned there, was Chris Colbert, as my guy Mar was mentioning there, right? So Chris Colbert, was in there against Blas Ezekiel Caro, right? I got the belt sheet here, so I showed it before. I still got it right here, right? Going up against Blas Ezekiel Caro, they're in that super lightweight division or whatever it was, and there he was in an 8-round bout, against Caro, and it was an Argentinian that he was going up against, and y'all know how it is with Argentinian fighters, man. They really tough to get down or knock down or whatever it is, but shout out to Chris Colbert. He was able to score a knockdown, there in one of those rounds. But the round before that, he almost got in trouble himself. And as I was mentioning, you got to watch it with these Argentinian fighters. They'll have that power that could really, stun you and stuff like that. And, we know about the thing there with Chris Colbert and, how many times he's got stopped, particularly recently, right? So that kind of made things to be a little bit dangerous of sorts out there for Chris Colbert. But he was able to get this win, and it was a win by decision out there with a score of 80-71, 78-73, and 77-74 there for him to score that win, right? So he goes to 18-3, and with him having a world title at one point in his career, but falling short against Hector Luis Garcia back in 2022. He overlooked Garcia there in that one. And then, he's had two losses in his past 4 fights, or 3 losses in his past 5 fights. So ever since that win he had in 2021 against Tuksok Yambayar, he's had 2 wins and 3 losses. Yo, yeah, that's crazy right there. You know what I mean? So him, just getting this fight going, and then we'll see what's going on after that, because in the initial press conference and stuff like that, when he said that he got the call to be part of the card, he was pretty much like 1 foot out the door, you know. So it was, Danny Garcia giving him the phone call. He's like, all right, I'll get back in there. I'll get back in the mix. I'll, go ahead and have a fight here and get my, get my record up if I can. And so there with this performance, you kind of see that he has those, as they say, those skills to where, people were calling them little B-hop. But at the same token, like, he'll have the thing where he'll have his guard down or his hand down, which opens the door for hooks. And if you get within range and get within good range and land a good shot, then it could be the same thing for him. You know what I mean? So here you had that over the course of that fight, but still he was able to get the win. I don't know what would be next for him. I don't know if it would be cool to kind of like be a B-side or an opponent for somebody on the come up or something like that. You know what I mean? Particularly with this being in the as they say, the junior welterweight division, when he is nowhere near a 140-pound guy. So if they have him like competing at maybe lightweight or something like that, yeah, potentially, but above lightweight, nah, he shouldn't really do all of that. And if someone like kind of like proposes something to him where it's above lightweight, nah, he should really take that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe they'll see about having him on the pro box card again or something to see if he could get back in the mix or something like that. But yeah, that's what they got with that one. But that kind of like goes into what I was saying in reference to this card, man. Like, a number of these fights, like in the second half, remember, it was 14 total fights on the card, yo. And the last 7 fights, we had 2 stoppage victories. Two of them. The Damian Neba, Joey DeWichko, and of course the Danny Garcia versus Daniel Gonzalez. And the Damian Neba fight, that was up until the 9th round. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, bro, that was an absolute marathon to get through on that front, man. Shout out to brother Joe in the building here on the live chat, stuff like that. So we got this in here, like I said, 14 fights there at the Barclays Center. And yeah, just being up front, the crowd there, I thought it would have been a little bit better, but I think it's more about the fighters that were on the card. Outside of just Danny Garcia, you really didn't have that much representation there for New York City outside of maybe Chris Colbert. And just being honest with y'all, Chris Colbert ain't really that much of a fan favorite out there in New York, man. He's just not. So a number of these fights that they had out there, you couldn't really get the overall support that maybe you would need in order to make it be a little bit more successful that it is. And with me also with Damian Neba being on the card, of course you have a Polish fighter there, and yeah, you may have had like all the chance and stuff going on, but it's not like Damian Neba is someone like a Kaunaki, back in the day. Kaunaki had like a huge following, so to speak, when he was coming up there in the heavyweight division. But Damian Neba isn't quite there yet. But I will say this though, Damian Neba has potential. I'm gonna just say that he has potential. Like, he could put punches together. He could move in and out. He could bounce back and forth. Like, I'm telling you, if they really take time to develop him in the heavyweight division, he could be something. I'll just say that. Right. All right. So that kind of like goes through most of the stuff that I had there for that fight card, because like I said, it was an absolute marathon. Like, you got doors opening at about like 4 p.m. first fight at like 4:30, and then the fight card don't end until after 1 a.m. That's absolutely insane. That's absolutely insane. All right, so next joint up, man, I wanted to kind of like touch on this thing here with Oleksandr Usyk. Of course, he is the undisputed champion there in the heavyweight division, right? And there are some that kind of like said that okay, we're not sure about Oleksandr Usyk's moves as far as like who he could potentially fight, right? So he had like something there where he was having some comments and stuff like that as far as like who he could potentially be fighting and all of that type of stuff there. But he was talking with I think it was through the website Ready to Fight, right? And he kind of said that his plans as far as like how long he's going to continue his career and that type of stuff there. But we said like first off, he said that he said he'll fight until he's 41 years old, and he's currently like 38, right? So he said he'll have like a couple more years in the game or whatever it is, and then you'll get right back, and then just say he'll hang it up after that and build a sports academy there. Like quote, he says, "I'll fight until I'm 41, then I'll build a sports academy and I'll train there and train others." Right? But he said that he's back in training after being sidelined by a back injury, which forced a postponement of a fight with WBO mandatory challenger Joseph Parker. And if y'all remember, man, he said, hey, he had a back injury, but then soon after that, we see a video of Oleksandr Usyk, doing the two-step, doing the waltz and all that. I was like, man, that was absolutely crazy, man. I ain't saying that he's sidestepping Joseph Parker, but you mean to tell me that soon after Joseph Parker is lined up in a fight here coming up against Fabio Wardley, and here we are for fight week 4, that particular fight to take place. Oh, now Oleksandr Usyk is back in the gym. Like, come on, what's going on with that? And then more to it, he says like that he'll return next year, but folks are talking about maybe him potentially fighting Moses Itauma. But he like, nah, I ain't, that ain't gonna be, that the opponent for me next. Like, I'm not really interested in that. That's not, in the cards for me. He said like he's young, 20 years old, as we were mentioning, and he said that Itauma said himself that he doesn't hit grandpas. Yeah, that's kind of funny there on that front, but. You got Moses Itauma that's currently ranked number 1 in the WBO and number 1 in the WBA. So he's kind of quickly been a top contender there in the heavyweight division. But at least for me, I'm not sure if Itauma is particularly ready to be there to go up against an Oleksandr Usyk. I think he needs about a fight or two there in the heavyweight division to kind of like get himself in the mix there and whatnot. But that kind of like sums up what Oleksandr Usyk was saying, and he said like he'll try to get in the mix with the fight, and they say they can't say who he'll fight next because negotiations are ongoing. He said that he'd be lying to folks if he was able to give a name. But I mean, you got undisputed champ there, Oleksandr Usyk. Having the one fight that he had against Daniel Dubois in July, so he ain't really getting back in the mix until next year. But being 38 years old, it's almost like you see a number of these fighters only having like one fight a year or something like that. And as an undisputed champion, that's kind of like a little bit of a downer of sorts. But as they say sometimes, being an undisputed champion, you got mandatory after mandatory after mandatory that you're gonna have to have those, as they say, musical chairs as far as like who he could fight. So I mean, maybe they say, hey, we'll have another fight here in the interim of some sort. Some people say that he might have another fight with Tyson Fury. I don't think he should have another fight with Tyson Fury. But outside of that, I really don't know who could be a good opponent out there that would kind of give Usyk a good challenge out there. Academic, you got any suggestions for potential opponents for Oleksandr Usyk?
Bomb squad. Hear me out. Hear me out. If Usyk just simply beats Deontay Wilder, Usyk can simply say, I beat all the best heavyweights in my time. Period. That's the end of the sentence. If he just simply fights Deontay Wilder, he can say he beat all the best. We know Deontay Wilder is a former shell of himself, but he can simply say that. People, Terrence Crawford is the man. Terrence Crawford is the man. He's the best fighter today. But he fought an older Canelo. But people still give him the credit to say that he's the dude, which he is. Mm-hmm. Usyk should fight Deontay Wilder. And I have a question for you, JR.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you telling me you need your back to do the Ukrainian two-step? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Hey man, I don't know what he was doing, man. He was doing the two-step, the shake, and he was like, doing, I don't know, he was doing Vogue or something, man. He was doing a whole bunch of dances, man. Say that he has a back injury, man. I don't know, man. Me, if I had a back injury, I wouldn't be doing anything, man. I would be like, moving. I wouldn't be moving for nothing. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing about that. But there with Deontay Wilder, you would have that instance of like saying, yeah, I beat all of those fighters within that particular era with the Fury, Joshua, Wilder that kind of like defined from I would say 2014, 2015 up until like 2020 or 2021 or something like that. But with what happened, the back and forth between Wilder and Fury, that kind of like extended things out to like 2022 or something like that, right? So with that being said, you got the thing there with Oleksandr Usyk potentially fighting someone like a Deontay Wilder that could be something for him. If he's not able to fight Joseph Parker, because at one time Joseph Parker was the WBO full champion there. So you got him as also a potential opponent. It just depends on what happens here in his upcoming fight against Fabio Wardley. And I know that there's some people that kind of like dismiss Deontay Wilder as an opponent, but the thing about it is that, hey, I could figure out a way to dismiss a number of opponents that are out there. And for me, I'm like, listen, I am more of a fan of having fighters getting as many fights as possible. So if they feel like, hey, this could be an easy lick for Oleksandr Usyk getting Deontay Wilder at this particular juncture, then maybe. There might be another suggestion as an opponent for Oleksandr Usyk. That's a guy that's up there in age as well. And I kind of like forgot to mention that he was out there in at the Barclays Center because he's based in the area. He is located around the Jersey area. And I know that you have, the bomb squad, but, you also would kind of have the bang squad in a fighter that did defeat Deontay Wilder there in Zhilei Zhang. So Zhilei Zhang is another one that could be a fighter that Oleksandr Usyk could potentially face. But, again, I think with Oleksandr Usyk, the major factor is going to be money there for it. So he's kind of like limiting himself in a sense to fighting like a Tyson Fury or maybe someone else there within the heavyweight division that kind of like would generate the funds there. And with Usyk being from the Ukraine and everything like that, it's like, where are you going to host this? You only have a few places to kind of like host these fights. You know what I'm saying? So I think it may end up being something like Tyson Fury. And the reason why I say that is because I think they're going to try to angle to see if they have Fury finally get one against Usyk. And if it gets one against Usyk, and then becomes undisputed champion, then they'll find another way to try to finally have Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua later in the year, but it would be for the undisputed heavyweight championship. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing about that.
So
But
I got a couple comments. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my haters are talking. So could you pull up the comment from Joseph? One of my haters are talking.
Says there isn't enough money to make a fight between Usyk and Wilder.
Put up his next comment. This is where the hater in here comes out.
This exposes how little this guy knows about the business.
Okay, so what I do know about boxing is that Turkey Al-Sheikh has been giving people purses that they probably shouldn't be getting. And Usyk is at the end of his career. And the highest payday that he could make outside of Tyson Fury is who?
Oh, for Usyk?
Yes.
As of right now, I would say Anthony Joshua.
Okay. Disqualify Anthony Joshua. Outside of Usyk, outside of Tyson Fury, outside of two people he done beat twice that he could make more money of, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, what's the highest next person he can make the most money as a new person?
I would say potentially there as a new person, Deontay Wilder.
Deontay Wilder, because Deontay Wilder, no matter in what position he's been in, he calls for dollars. People would pay for the fight. Somebody would pay for the fight. So to say someone doesn't know about boxing, Joseph, you just reminded me that I'm going to point out again how much you don't know about boxing, because you said that whatever you said, which was outrageous many moons ago, it was quite outrageous. Your commentary about Tim Bradley is not one of the best 140 pounders in the last 30 years. I still hadn't showed you why that was ridiculous, but I think I want to now because you're such a hater.
Like I
but
said,
I'm glad to have
maybe we'll set up a debate in reference to that later on down the line. You know, we'll
Hey James,
get
I only debate my equals. All others I teach, and we know we know he don't listen, so it's not a lot I could probably teach him.
A John Henry Clark reference. Wow. Okay.
And I hope that pissed him off. And I hope that pissed him off.
We'll see if we could arrange something in reference to all of that and see how far that goes on that reference, right? All right. So, as I said there, with Oleksandr Usyk, we'll see how it goes. And also to that point too, right? There was something, what it was, either last week or the week before, where Deontay Wilder had an interview and he said something about, him getting back in the ring. And then like the message that he had on there was, he said, all I'm going to say is 2-time. So with that being said, that, could potentially open the door. Now, I mean, initially, I was saying that maybe he could fight, the WBC interim champion there in Fabio. But as they said, if it's not Fabio, then there's only one other fighter I would say that Wilder could be in the mix to be facing, and that could be Oleksandr Usyk. And the thing about it is like, hey, if not now, then when? It's still like a fight that was, under consideration over the past, couple of years or so. If it wasn't for, Wilder's fights against Joseph Parker and Soleil Zhang, then you probably could have still had that be among the discussion as one of the top fights to make in the heavyweight division. But still with that being said, what else is out there? You know what I mean? And given like, other fights that, are out there with, Joseph Parker already, occupied here against Fabio Wardley, like Usyk fight against a Fabio right now, like who would be interested in that? What else is out there? As he said, he dismissed a Moses Itauma. You know what I'm saying? So Who else could be out there? Zhilei Zhang, maybe, but a Philip Hergovich, nah, you know, nobody else is pretty much out there. So if it could be someone like a Deontay Wilder, then hey, if you get enough interest or get enough buzz, then they'll be like, hey, let's just see if we can put that out there and see how far that goes. You know what I'm saying? So we could see that as a potential matchup out there for Oleksandr Usyk in 2026. All right.
So
So
both of the
there's that.
fights that you mentioned, Zhang and Wilder, should be easy wins for Usyk. And at this point, I mean, maybe he had an easy win on his last fight with Dubois as well too. But I mean, maybe he has a tough fight, but we think he gonna fight like killers for the last 3 years of his career. I don't think so.
Right. But the thing about it is that are we going to see Oleksandr Usyk fight more than once in these next 3 years? That's going to be another question. Because I think also too is with him being up there in age, you also got to think about injuries and things like that. If he will be 100%, each time going into the fight or close to 100% going into the fight, or if he's going to have something that's going to linger, there further down the line on that front. You know what I'm saying? So we could see, how that goes on that. All right. Next up here, October 25th is coming up, and yeah, we could have had, the WBC Super Welterweight title on the line with Sebastian Fundora versus Keith Thurman. But Sebastian Fundora, they said suffered a hand injury, so that fight is delayed. So that whole fight card that was supposed to be in Las Vegas on October 25th has been scrapped. So what we got here is going to be over in London, with the headlining bout there, Joseph Parker versus Fabio Wardley for that WBO interim title. Of course, as I mentioned there, Joseph Parker being a former WBO full champion, they're approaching this particular fight here against Fabio Wardley. I think it's going to be something that I'll have a little bit of interest there because with Fabio Wardley, he's there at 19-0-1. There, and what I would say has those knockout victories that he had in those past couple of fights with the rematch against Frazier Clark and then the one here in June against Justice Hooney. So Joseph Parker, I think with him having the amount of experience that he has, he should be able to have a little bit of the advantage here against Fabio Wardley. Just quick tail of the tape there. You got Joseph Parker there at 36-3 with 24 wins by way of knockout there at 6'4", with a 76 inch reach there at 33 years old. Fabio Wardley there undefeated, as I mentioned there, 19-0-1 with 18 wins by way of knockout at 6'5" and 30 years old. So it's going to make for an interesting bout here, around the top of the heavyweight division. You know what I'm saying? So I have to see, how that kind of like shapes itself out here as far as like the winner and what that would mean for the heavyweight division. Now, if it ends up being Joseph Parker, then it's going to be like I don't think it's going to be no way out of, Oleksandr Usyk fighting Joseph Parker there for the full title there or for the undisputed titles. But if Fabio Wardley wins, then maybe that could open the door for Oleksandr Usyk to face just about anybody he could face while still holding the undisputed titles. Because as far as I know, I don't know what the status is for, like, say, the WBA. And, with Agakabio being the interim champion for the WBC, are they really, pushing for that to be his next bout? Although I feel like Usyk versus Cabio would be an interesting bout, as we were mentioning there earlier with Oleksandr Usyk and what his direction could be. I don't know if that's something where he's like, yeah, I want to go forward with that fight if I'm not going to get, the money that I'm looking for that particular fight. So, here with Parker versus Wardley, there's something there to, kind of like look to for the heavyweight division. As far as like the undercard, man, I ain't even like, to be honest with you, I don't even know like more than half of the people that are on this undercard. So what is this? Is this a Queensbury special? Yeah, this is a Queensbury special, man. Yeah, I have no idea who any of these guys are that's on the undercard. So I'll pretty much just being honest with y'all, just looking forward to that being the main event. They say that it is on the Zone pay per view. Okay, so on the Zone pay per view. All right. So you got that, and just on that mention there, pay per view. We recently got the announcement that the fight card scheduled for November 22nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, headlined by David Benavidez. They're going up against Anthony Yard, is going to be on pay per view. Okay, that's the thing about it is like, wait a minute, I thought we were going to have something where this fight card with Benavidez versus Yard, Haney versus Brian Norman Jr., Abdullah Mason, going for the WBO title. They're in the lightweight division. I thought that versus Sam Noakes. You got Arthur Beterbiev that's on there against Dion Nicholson. Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Fernando Martinez. I thought that was going to be for free 99. Now we find out they're going to have this and it's going to be on for pay-per-view. That's not a good look. That's not a good look, man. I would rather them say, hey, you know what? This given the fighters that are on this card, it's going to be a pay-per-view, and just say that off the rip instead of saying, hey, we're going to start this. I mean, I don't like this whole pay-per-view type stuff. I mean, we're going to have this here for free 99. And then now we get to see that it's going to be on pay-per-view. That's not good, especially when you have this thing initially on the Zone, because one, you first had the paywall having it on the Zone, and then now you're going to have it be pay-per-view as well. That's not much different than having a fight card that's on Amazon Prime, but it's going to be Amazon Prime pay-per-view, because you still have to have the subscription on Amazon Prime and then try to do the thing on pay-per-view as well, or have like a whole separate apparatus or whatever it is, like a pay-per-view.com or something, in order to order those fights. So you're putting in an additional paywall for fights of this magnitude, and it's like really turning off a number of fight fans when you do something like that, especially when for this particular event you initially pushed this as a card that would not be on pay-per-view. So man, it just smells like a level of dishonesty there on that front with that, man. So I don't know what else to say on that one, because I think a lot of fight fans were looking forward to seeing that fight card, at least be some type of free, or at least a good amount of discount or something like that. But now people are talking about, they want to complain about the Fire Stick crew and all that type of stuff. Now doing what you're doing here, you really like amped up that crew to do what they do. So we'll have to see how that goes on that front. Just a real quick here. Since I wasn't on Sunday or last Sunday, was out in like Florida and stuff like that, I really talked at length about the fight that happened at the Wells Fargo Center there with Jerome Boots Ennis and Luis Lima. Well, mainly because it only lasted one round. It was some would say a squash match, and for some people they saw Luis Lima when he was stepping out there to walk to the ring. He didn't look like he looked like what it was Curtis Harper. When Curtis Harper was supposed to fight Efe Ajagba, and then when the bell rung, Curtis Harper ended up leaving the ring. Maybe Luis Lima should have left the ring, because he got pretty much torched by Jerome Boots Ennis in that fight. And that was, for the WBA interim title there at the super welterweight division to, get Boots Ennis in the mix. We didn't catch a boxing academic, in his comments reference to that particular fight. So what were your reactions to Boots Ennis getting that easy win there against Luis Lima?
I mean, true talent tells over time. Boots essentially let his hands go, and he got him. He got him out of there. People are probably going to criticize me for this comment, but I'm gonna just tell you what I've thought of on the fight. Unfortunately, that win did not tell me a lot, other than what I already knew about Boots. He is talented and he got hands. And if he fights somebody who's below him, who's beneath him, his talent and his hands will end the fight very quickly. At the same time, I am glad that he won in the way that he did, because in winning that way, he separates himself, and people do not have excuses to not fight him anymore, which means it's time to see Boots in good fights. Boots is past this level. Time to see Boots in fights that somebody has a inkling of winning. Time to see him in good fights. People can't duck him no more. Time to see him in good fights. That's what I got from the fight. Time to see him in good fights.
Yeah. Yo, as I was mentioning there with this one, people looked at it as a squash match. When you have Boots Ennis as high as like a 30 to 1 or 35 to 1 favorite against Luis Lima, then that just shows you that, hey, Luis Lima shouldn't belong in the ring with him. And Jerome Boots Ennis showed that. Now, with Boots being the interim champion, now it's more of like, okay, who's out there that's next? Now, I mean, I kind of said that, hey, maybe he ends up fighting the WBA full champion there, but at the same token, if he ends up fighting the WBA full champion there in Abbas Barao, then that could be another instance of where leading into the fight, Boots Ennis would be highly favored against him. So it's like, okay, who is out there that he could face? Could he face a Virgil Ortiz Jr.? Well, first we got to see what Virgil Ortiz Jr. does against Erickson Lubin on November 8th, right? If you're going to have Sebastian Fedora, pretty much locked in here for a fight against Keith Thurman, then you can't really get Sebastian Fedora. Bakram Alexaliev has been out for pretty much a whole year. There's supposed to be a purse bid coming up between him and Josh Kelly. We're going to see if that actually goes through. I'm not sure if that actually goes through, given what Josh Kelly has been able to earn in his fights that don't even involve a world title. So if you think about Josh Kelly having his promotional team or whatever it is being involved in the purse bid, when Josh Kelly would get like a good amount of percentage less than the IBF champion, then I'm not too confident that they'll kind of like participate in that. And of course, Xander Zayas is the newly crowned WBO champion and hasn't been able to defend his title once yet. So you're not going to have like a Boots Ennis involved with that. So unless if we see something where they say, hey, we're ready to have Boots Ennis going up against Virgil Ortiz Jr., Virgil Ortiz gets a win over Erickson Lubin, then I see Boots Ennis either getting that world title fight against Sebastian Barao or another one where he kind of gets a defense of that interim title against maybe a Yoenis Tejas or against an Andreas Kasarakis. And given the state of boxing today, where everything is on TV or some form of TV, you're not gonna get that much. Well, you're gonna still get a lot of criticism about Jerome Boots Ennis if he fights a guy like Andreas Kasarakis or against a Yoenis Tejas. Or I mean, he's still going to get one against Abbas Barao if that ends up being a fight. So you only have like about a few options that are out there for Jerome Boots Ennis, where it's like, okay, now we get to see if Boots Ennis is ready for the big time or is ready for the big fights. And even with Virgil Ortiz Jr., it's not like Virgil Ortiz Jr. has had like a big time fight himself either. Like, I mean, you're gonna tell me that Sergey Boychuk is like a big fight or Israel Madrimov is a big fight like that? Nah. But the thing is, it's like if you have those two fighters matched up against each other, it's one of the more highly anticipated fights out there in boxing. So we got to see how they're going to work this, because you know how it is sometimes with promotional companies and all that type of stuff. They want to wait it out. They want to, kind of like build it up, get as much money as possible with the fight like that. Nah, we can't wait, that much anymore for like either one of these fighters. We got to see them two in the ring if we have Virgil Ortiz Jr. Getting the win over Eric Salubin. Because for me, it's like, what's the point of having Boots Ennis fighting Abbas Barao if we have to wait until at least February or March for that fight to take place? Nah, let's go ahead and wait a couple more months. Let's see if we have Boots versus Virgil there in May, particularly if we see what happens here with Virgil Ortiz Jr. against Eric Salubin, and if that particular event itself is very successful. So we got to see how that goes, right? So that's what the fans want to see. That's what a lot of the folks in the media want to see. But we got to see if it actually comes through in fruition on that. All right. So that's what I had here. Pretty quick, like hour plus segment here or episode here for the Boxing Source podcast. Big ups for the Boxing Academic for joining in this particular episode of Boxing Source podcast. And like I mentioned before, maybe we could arrange something for a debate with the Boxing Academic and Brother Joseph Aaron
Can I say
on
something?
that subject that we had. Go ahead.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
You allow him to talk freely, say a bunch of nonsense in your show. Give me 10 minutes to talk freely on some sensical stuff about the topic that he spoke on. During that show, he spoke freely for all that time. I want to speak freely without him interrupting me.
Wait, if it's you against him?
No, I just want you to pull up a show on Wednesday or Sunday, and I speak on the same topic he spoke on, which is essentially he said that not Josh Taylor, Prograis was was higher ranked on the best 140 pounders in the last 30 years than Regis Prograis. Prograis was higher than Tim Bradley, and Tim Bradley shouldn't be on the list. Like what? Like what kind of sense does that even make?
Okay.
And I can prove it just simply. I can just do a simple analysis to show how ridiculous that is. Like I get it. You may not like Tim Bradley's takes, and maybe he does some stuff to be salacious, but you cannot take away Tim Bradley's accolades. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he forgot. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm gonna make him remember. So yeah, I just need to talk without him interrupting me.
All right, so we'll set that up. See if we can make that happen. I'm gonna get the backdrop of that, because we have to go back to the show that was pretty much on one of the Tuesdays there with Coach Ronnie Shields, where we had that top 10 best fighters at 140 pounds over the past 30 years or so, right? So once we get that list up, and then we'll have the people that kind of like see that list, and then we'll move on from there and have those comments that happen after the list, and then with Boxing Academic, having that case there for Timothy Bradley there in Regis Prograis or against Regis Prograis. So hopefully we're able to set that up and make it happen here on the Boxing Source channel, all right, for the people to kind of like check out and everything like that. So once we get the technicals and all that type of stuff with that, then we'll be able to make that happen on that front there. So I'll see about getting that done within the next couple of days. Have Monday supposed to have something on IG Live there with Elijah Pierce. Also may have another interview scheduled there on Monday, and of course they have the the regular schedule Tuesdays Real Boxing with Coach Ronnie Shields. We get back with that Wednesday with the midweek report, and trying to have another interview here scheduled this time with Lamont Roach Jr. Hopefully we get that here for this week, so y'all be on the lookout for all of that. But once again, big thanks for everyone that's been able to listen in live, If you're going to be listening to the replay, big thanks to y'all for that. Hit the like button, hit the share button if you're on YouTube or Rumble or whatever it is, and hit the share button. And like I say, I used to say at the end of every show, but I'm gonna say here: the point of boxing is to hit, not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.